Hello. I'm not sure I can live up to the dramatic title that we've got, but I thought black was appropriate, you know. I've also realised I may have misjudged it slightly because looking out over the audience, we've got a former boss of mine. We've got volunteers who are currently working in the Sunday school at my church, including my wife is one of those people. I'm not going to name you guys, but we'll find out whether you're killing the church in the next few moments. In fact, we've also got some people who grew up through that Sunday school, so, you know, we've done well. I know I'm about to offend them all. We'll see. This title actually comes from a blog that appeared on my Facebook feed about 2 months ago, and I was curious. You know, is Sunday school killing the church? And it turns out that there's quite a lot of people who think that maybe it is. Maybe it's a contributing factor to the decline in church over recent years. And I think that's quite an interesting thing to look at. So that means you've all got to look at it now for the next 15 minutes. There's been books written about it. One of them's called Let's Kill Sunday School Before It Kills the Church. And I ordered it, but it hasn't arrived. But the cover looks really exciting, okay? If you want to read that book, don't order it from Amazon because it took a long time and it's still not arrived. There's other books. A guy called Tim Wright has written quite a lot about it. He's got a book called Sunday Schooling Our Kids Out of Church. And a lot of what I'm saying kind of comes from some of his work. So tonight we're talking about, could Sunday school be doing more damage than good? Is Sunday school killing the church? I'm going to use the word Sunday school, although it's obviously called lots of different things. Sometimes it's called junior church. Sometimes it's called, you know, mega fun day club or something like that. We're just going to stick with Sunday school just to keep it simple. It's the thing that happens when the church service is happening for the children. That's what we're going for, Sunday school. So Sunday school was first invented as a phrase in the 1780s. When Christians recognised that children who worked in mills and factories had no option to go to education because they had to have a job, they had to work all the time. And on their only day off, they tended to run wild and go a bit crazy. And, you know, people didn't like that, so they organised a school and they taught them to read or write. But they only taught them to read or write so they could read the Bible. And that was kind of how it started. It was very popular, and within 50 years, 1.5 million children were involved in these Sunday school groups. This also led directly to the creation of the whole education system that we have today. There wasn't a provision for people who couldn't pay fees to go to school in the 18th century. But by the end of the 19th century, there was compulsory education for all children. So what Christians did in creating this free school for working children led to education for all children. So Sunday school happened then basically as a school. But gradually it became more and more about Christian formation. So after compulsory education came in, they stopped doing the teaching, the reading and writing, because there were other places to learn that. They focused much more on spiritual matters. In the early 20th century, they did lots of sports activities and social events. And then, bless you, after the Second World War, it became very much a spiritual exercise. One significant thing to note is that throughout all that history, that first 150 years of Sunday school, it never happened at the same time as the main church service. It never happened in that way. And in fact, for most of the history of the church across the world for those 2,000 years, all ages would have worshipped together. They would have been part of the same thing. And with all the mess that involves, we often don't think about it in those terms, but crying babies would have been part of churches throughout all of that time. And it changed pretty much after the Second World War, and pretty quickly too. So by 1970, it was pretty much commonplace for Sunday school to be first and foremost about spiritual education and to take place during the Sunday morning service. And I was quite surprised when I read that, because I didn't think it was that recent that would have been happening. It's always felt like a really well-established thing that's always been there, that's always been part of church tradition. The adults go here, the children go here. We do similar things, but not the same thing. But in fact, it's less than 70 years old. Now, interestingly, in that same 70-year period, in the Western world, we have seen the largest decline in the numbers of Christians in the history of Christianity. Dun, dun, dun. That means they're the same, doesn't it? Because they happened at the same time, so it must be that. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I'm finished. No. Since 1945, more people have left churches in the Western world than have joined them. And that's also, seen the rise of Sunday school. Now, actually, as it turns out, as I did a bit more reading, Sunday school taking place at the same time as the service was actually a reaction to the decline in church attendance. So because churches realised they now had to compete with other things, they had to work harder to keep people in their congregation. And that was no bad thing, actually, to try and find more ways to keep people in church. One great way to do this was to make sure the children were happy, because if children are happy, then parents are happy. I think any parents here, yeah, some nodding parents in the congregation, in the audience, excuse me. So the church experience got separated out. So the parents and children could each receive in a relevant way to them. The young people could learn what they wanted to in the way they needed to. The adults could concentrate on their thing in their way. Separate things achieving the same sort of aim. And the reason for that is good. It's much easier for adults to concentrate and focus without children running around your feet, trying to get you to colour in, or just generally punching you in the head, which is what seems to happen to me all the time. That's my children, not the ones I work with at church, just to be clear. Yeah, my children love to punch me in the head. Great. So it happened for a good reason, and it was actually had a very positive impact. Enabled many families to be part of a church who might not have been otherwise. And it meant that parents could concentrate and could learn more and could grow more. It meant that children could get the same thing because they're in a group that's meeting their specific needs rather than sitting with everyone else, maybe not understanding what's going on, maybe not really wanting to be there. They could be in a place where they really wanted to be, and it worked really, really well. Or at least it worked really, really well at that time. The unintended consequence, and this is the main thing that Tim Wright and the others are focusing on, the unintended consequence of separating out adults and children is where the problem lies. So the young people loved their activities. They did. Sunday schools were huge, and you often, if you talk to the older people in your congregation, they'll tell you about how they had to rent 3 coach loads to get the Sunday school to the beach for the Sunday school outing. And now, you get 1 minibus and tootle off. It's quite a different situation. The young people loved their tailor-made groups. It worked really well. But the problem was they loved them so much they never really made it into the adult church. They were never part of that grown-up experience of church. They were part of the youth program, the children's groups, but never connecting with the adults. Their foundations were built in a different environment. They were used to things being specifically targeted at them. And so when they're coming into this wider group with this huge range of ages, all the way from 18 to 90 or more, they weren't there. They're not familiar with that environment. They're not familiar maybe with the liturgy, with the hymns. They don't know most of the people who are there. The adult worship service was not their home. And so when they were finished with youth group, they were finished with church. Tom Furtz of ministrymatters.com writes this about the millennial generation, which is those born sort of in the 80s and 90s. Do you want to know why millennials aren't attending your church? They're not coming because they've never had to attend your church. Think about it. From the time my generation was born, we were thrown into nurseries with other babies. Then we went to children's ministries to be entertained while our parents went to big church. Then we had middle school ministry. Then we had youth group. It wasn't until we graduated college that we were expected to be part of the intergenerational community called church. We'd been segregated by age for the first 22 years, and this was not only allowed, but encouraged. So the idea is that we didn't prepare young people to be part of a grown-up church, and that meant many of them were unable to transition into one. Ken DeCreasy-Dean, who's a leading youth ministry theologian, has this great quote. We may question what we believe, but most of us are pretty clear about who we love and who loves us. It's such a preposterous claim that God is with us, that young people are unlikely to believe it unless we give them opportunities to do some sacred eavesdropping on us as we seek delight and trust in God's presence with us. I love that phrase, sacred eavesdropping. There's a sense in which children being present in worship means they're exposed to things they don't understand. And, that can be frustrating for them, and that can be frustrating for parents and adults. But actually being exposed to something that they don't understand enables them to do this sacred eavesdropping, this experiencing the way adults experience faith, the way grown-ups do it. And they will experience things through that experience too. But that eavesdropping on an adult faith enables them to see where that journey might lead to, where their faith journey goes. It doesn't just end when I get to 18 and there's nothing fun to do at church. It can keep going, it can keep developing. I can experience what my parents and their other adults are experiencing too. So the problem as they see it is that Sunday school and associated youth programs have not enabled young people to know what adult church is like, so they don't see the value in it. This causes a number of them to drop out because they don't see how their home church can meet their needs. And those leaving home can run into a similar problem. They don't know how to be part of a church, only how to be part of a youth and children's program. So that's one side of it, is that Sunday school can cause a separation. A chasm can be created that they can't cross. The other problem is that sometimes Sunday school isn't really clear what it is or what it's for. So here's an interesting list. A good Sunday school should be a place where children can worship God in a way that really helps them connect with him. It should be a place where they should be educated about Bible stories and know how to make sense of the Bible that they read. It should be a place where they're equipped to take their faith into their schools and share that faith with their friends. It should be a place where they're able to talk about their feelings with people who love them. It should be a place where they can learn about their church and the history of their denomination. It should be a place where they're prepared for confirmation or baptism. It should be a place where they can relax and enjoy being with other Christian peers. And it should do all of those things in 45 minutes. Or an hour if it's communion. Okay? Now, please don't take this as me criticizing your Sunday school or my Sunday school. The problem is actually rarely to do with the leaders, but often to do with the results implicitly expected of them. You can't do all of those things in 45 minutes once a week. You just can't. Sunday school leaders are often expected to offer each young person everything an adult would get from a church in just that time frame. In some churches, faith formation ends up being solely left to the Sunday school. Some church parents will overtly share faith and disciple their children at home. Others won't, because actually they know, well, my church has got it handled. In the same way, perhaps, as we assume that all education can be done by the school without any parental support. It's not often that we decide to do that. We don't say, well, I will never mention Jesus at home because my church will take care of all the Jesus stuff for me. But actually, it's something that gets squeezed out in all the busyness, in all the things that must be done, in all the tasks that we have to achieve. It's not prioritized because actually we know that church will cover some of it anyway. But according to the National Study of Youth and Religion, which was a major American study of young people and young adults, they said that 80% of them said that their parents were the primary influence on their faith development. Parents are the most influential youth workers that there are. Sunday school has 1 hour a week with children. A parent has so many more opportunities to serve. If parents expect Sunday school to offer everything a child needs to grow in their faith, then that child is being set up to fail. The best way for a parent to help their child to grow is to overtly share that faith in the home and in the family life. They'll see the way that faith impacts on a parent much more clearly than anywhere else. Discipleship and worship, all the aspects of our faith, in fact, are best seen most authentically in the rawest possible way in our family life. We can't expect 1 hour on a Sunday to effectively disciple young people unless we can equip and enable parents to support that ministry through the way that they live out their faith at home. And obviously this can be really tough for young people who don't have Christian or supportive parents. So perhaps we need to prioritize those young people in the rest of the week. So I guess the key question maybe is what is Sunday school actually for? Is it a time of gathered worship? Is it for Bible education? Is it for pastoral care? I mean, in an hour a week, we can maybe do one or two of those things well. It becomes much easier if we've got supportive families or the luxury of being able to do extra youth and children's activities during the week. But perhaps by being more targeted in what we want to do, we can become more effective at it. We can make our ministry more impactful if we decide, actually, we want these young people to be able to worship. And so our Sunday school is going to be an opportunity for them to worship together first and foremost. Or we want them to learn Bible stories. Now, I'm not saying you can't do both of those things, but it's good to know what you're actually trying to achieve in your Sunday school. So going back to that title, dramatic question, is Sunday school killing the church? I would say no, it's not. Perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps the church is killing the Sunday school by placing unrealistic expectations on it, by not offering positive support for parents or providing quality training for leaders. Perhaps we're actually not enabling our Sunday schools to succeed. And then perhaps even more challengingly, we've got to think, who benefits the most from Sunday school? Is it the young people, Or is it the adults? Because at its root, Sunday school was set up originally as a way of enabling adults to be part of worship without being distracted. At its root, perhaps Sunday school is childcare, to keep the kids busy while the adults do their real stuff with God. And even if that's absolutely not why it's there, that can be what it feels like to some of the children. So, for example, one thing that bothers me sometimes at our church, we go in with the children, everybody's together for the first 15 minutes, and then we go out to do the children's and the youth work in our groups in a relevant way, which is good, and the adults do their thing in the church. And the session always finishes at whatever time the service finishes. Now, usually that's 11:45, but sometimes that's 12 o'clock, sometimes that's 12:15. We always finish at the same time as the adults finish. The adults never wait for us to finish. And what message does that send to our children? And then again, we're not overtly saying you're not as important as what's going on in the church, but implicitly, subconsciously perhaps, that message is coming across that our stuff is only counts while their stuff is going on. And then also, going back to this, is it about the young people or is it about the adults? How much training do you have to lead worship or to preach in your church on an adult service? And how does that compare to the amount of training you're offered when you're invited to lead a youth group or a children's group? Or when we decide which teaching material to use, do we choose the one that's going to be best for our group that we've got, or the one that's easiest for us to plan for ourselves, the one that's going to enable us to plan it quickly and effectively, rather than the one that's going to be best for the group that we're working with? Or how much freedom would you have to change your Sunday school? To make it longer or shorter, to make it louder or more expensive? Would change in the Sunday school to benefit the children in that group be welcomed, or would it only be welcomed if it didn't affect the adult work too much? Who is it really for? It's a challenging thought, I think. Does our Sunday school exist to keep our adults happy? Or is its primary function to do what's best for the young people? Now, obviously, in an ideal world, it will do both. It will meet the needs of the young people while also providing some benefit for the adults. But if we can't do that, it's our job as youth workers, as children's workers, as family workers, to put those children first, however we can. Christina Embry from a website called Refocusing Ministry wrote this. We have the eyes of an entire generation looking to us to keep them in the pews. They haven't decided yet that church is too showy or too traditional. They don't know the difference between seeker-friendly or missional. They have no idea what liturgies, sacraments, theology, and denominations are, and they're not likely to critique whether or not the music is too loud, too slow, or too quiet. They are looking to us for one thing. They want to be seen, they want to be loved, and they want to belong. That's one of my favourite one things, because it's three things. They want to be seen, they want to be loved, and they want to belong. The children in your churches right now want to be seen and loved and to belong. And if they can't find that sense of belonging in church, they will look for it somewhere else. At some point, they will look somewhere else. So I believe that Sunday school is not necessarily killing the church. I believe Sunday school can save the church. Because if we can enable young people to feel like they belong at their church, not just in their small group part of it, but within the whole body, the whole family, as a valued and significant member of that church community, then why would they want to leave? Because they will feel valued and important and significant. And they need that. And adults need to feel that too, don't they? Now, as to how you do that, we've run out of time. Oh, dear. Oh, well. But actually, it's not a situation with an answer that I can just glibly give you. There isn't a silver bullet that gives you the answer. Each young person is different. Each church is different. Each situation is different. It's up to us to discern, within our context, what would work. Where is God leading us? What is actually going to benefit the young people that we are working with best? In so many ways, adults and children are actually very similar. Everybody wants to be valued. Everybody needs somewhere to belong. So let's make sure that our Sunday school is enabling our church to be a place like that. That our Sunday school is integrated with a loving church, a community where all ages can encourage one another on in faith. Because children have just as much to offer as adults. People who are... I'll just carry on. I'm pretty much finished. it wasn't quite as polished or perfected a lecture as I might have hoped for. It turns out there's a lot more that I could have said. The more I read, the more I wanted to say, and the less time I found out that I had. So it was hopefully some thoughts that challenged you and encouraged you a bit. But I'd love to hear what it sparked in you, actually. What is your church doing to help integrate children? What is your church doing that enables different generations to work together on a kind of equal footing? How good is your church at encouraging your youth and children's ministry? How good is it at integrating young people into your church community? Do any of you have good ideas that you think someone else might want to hear? Just put your hand up and Kieran will run over with a mic. He said, we haven't got a mic. Well, I'll just throw this one out. Would anyone like to share anything? Okay, can you see in the middle? Okay. Well done, Kieran. Good job. That's a compliment for you.
Yeah, just saying about the time you finished, because it used to be the same, that someone would come in and say, you've got 5 minutes left whenever the adult sermon had finished, and then we'd be in the middle of craft activities, like, right, clear up, and we'd all try and rush back. It just got really fed up with it because you'd plan, stuff and really hard. So we just decided we'd finish at a certain time, go back across, and then they'd basically kind of everyone's taking communion. So if they'd finished communion, they kept one altar open for us all to rush up at the end, and we'd be able to do that regardless of the time. Even if people were coming out of church, we could still go in and take part in that. But it's nice because generally it means we come in at the end of the service as well, so children are there at beginning and end.
Brilliant, that's great, yeah. So it's a way to enables the youth to be part of it, even when they're late. It's great, accommodating everyone. Okay, has anyone else got anything to add? Okay, Dan.
This isn't me, but I've got this mate who runs a church, and I really love what you were saying, because what they do is that everyone goes into the main worship space, and then the adults get sent out. And I think it models a really good thing to the kids to say, like, you're really important, then the adults go off to the group. Now, I realise that isn't realistic in like churches every week, but I just wonder whether even if you did it once, it might just change that shift in people's heads that Excellent. There's so good luck with that.
Yeah. Brilliant.
One thing that we're doing is encouraging the youngsters to take part in other responsibilities within the church. We've got a technical sound desk, the computer, the projection, and we've got a couple of the youngsters that are quite keen to get involved in that. And have gone onto the rota on a every now and then basis, which enables them to come into junior church, but also to take an active part, an important part, and a role that not everybody can do in the church.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing, actually, when we're getting young people involved in the wider life of the church, not just to give them the little job, but to enable them to be part of the same rota as everybody else. And I think the sound desk or the projection or something like that is a really good example that often young people are just as good, are actually more able to use the technology than some adults. And that's a great way that they can be on the same plane or even further ahead than a number of the rest of the congregation. Okay, we've got time for one more, I think. There's someone over here, Kieran.
Oh, sorry.
All right, we'll do two.
Yeah, we were talking about this whole thing of children's church and adult church, and saying to follow a rhythm. So within the junior church, we're going to try and find a pattern and a rhythm that mirrors what goes on in main church, but actually try to go through some of the liturgy, but in a fun way. So actually, it's not all so new when you're trying to say, actually now you're top end of here, you've got to go back into church. It's like, well, actually I don't know what any of this is about. So that's what we're just going to try and mirror a rhythm and just see where we go. Haven't started it yet, but that's what we're planning.
Fantastic, thank you. And then Stephen, got the last word.
You're saying about Sunday school finishing when main church finishes. What we do is that the finish time, we take the children back into the church, and that cuts the preacher out. Because if she or he hasn't finished, then they've got to finish because the kids are coming back in. But there's another aspect to it, is that what we were finding, and the reason why we did that, was that the parents would just stay in the church, and then we would be left with the kids until whatever time they decided to come and collect them, and they became our responsibility when it's finished. the children have to go back to the parents, and they're their parents' responsibility from that on, because we're not running a babysitting service till 6 o'clock in the evening.
Brilliant. So it's great. You know, there are things afoot. So I would just urge you to think on those things. Don't just assume that Sunday school is part of church and will always be part of church and has always been part of church. The children and young people in your church may be at a separate part during the service. Maybe they're with you for most of the services. But they're just as valuable. They need to feel just as valued. They need to belong just as much. They need to be challenged and encouraged in just the same way as adults. And I believe that Sunday school can be a fantastic place where we can disciple young people, where we can help them grow, and we can grow and journey alongside them. Even the very youngest children have some amazing insights, even my children sometimes. So yeah, I just want to really encourage you as you go back to your churches, as you go back to the places that you come from, just to really value people, the grown-ups, the people you don't really like, the children and the children you don't really like. Just really value them all, you know, make them feel welcome, help them to belong, and challenge them to go out. Thank you.